Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this very slow news day here in the wide world of sports. Obviously, being totally sarcastic there. It was so busy, I didn't even get a chance to do some of my normal routine stuff that I normally do. I won't even get to college football today, but that's good because there's not going to be a guest on the program tomorrow nor Thursday. I do before I get started, I do want to give a quick announcement here. It looks like the first college football playoff, and I tell you, being out of the Tennessee area, I would not have imagined in a million years that Tennessee would be the number one team in the first college football playoff. They were not even a team that I mentioned coming in. I don't think anybody had. So it's the top five are in the first college football playoff will be Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson. Georgia falls to number 3. That'll give them a little bit of motivation coming into this Saturday's game. Even though, according to the AP, they're still the number one team. That's a quick side note. I'm not going to get to any college football today. I'll probably get to that tomorrow. The Pickle says it's, they got a title shot there. But there was so much news here. Going to talk about the Boston Celtics. They are just wiping the sweat off their brow and just taking a deep breath. Totally relieved by what has transpired today with Steve Nash basically being fired. I mean, if there were 2-5, it's always the mutually agreed to part ways, and there was no compensation for a suspended Ime Udoka with the Celtics there. We'll get into that a little bit. But first, according to Adam Scheffner, 10 deadline trades in the NFL is a record. Today was a record in the NFL for trade deadline NFL trades. Blew me out of the water with some of these trades. Really caught off guard, particularly with Bradley Chubb and TJ Hockenson. So let's get right to that. Okay. Oh, man. Okay, so Bradley Chubb, to me, Bradley Chubb is definitely the biggest one. Chubb was drafted in 2018. I want to say he is playing on his 5th-year option. He was a Pro Bowler. Bradley Chubb was a Pro Bowler, actually, believe it or not. And it always tells me, Pickles, that a deal like this, it tells me what the teams think. It tells me what management thinks. If you see teams start to trade away players and you're still somewhat mathematically in it, they don't think they have the future at quarterback. They don't think they have the future or at team. The quarterback's too young. It's a new general manager. It's not his players. They do not want to hang on to this contract. It tells you a lot by what's the old adage for this, folks? Watch what they do, not what they say. Watch what they do, but not what they say, okay? So anyways, that I mentioned, I'll also give you guys my Power 5 this week, of course. So, like I said, it's 10 trades, most ever. It's getting like the Major League Baseball. Remember, July 31st used to be the big deal in Major League Baseball. It used to be, and just after the All-Star break in the NBA, now those dates have been pushed back in both leagues, I want to say. Now the NFL is kind of topping these leads out. Remember last year, Von Miller, he was traded to the Von Miller was traded to the LA Rams last year. That was a big trade. Gave up a second-round pick. They lost their first game, but he helped propel that team, playing alongside of Aaron Donald, to a Super Bowl win. And ever since, you've got new You've got new managers, young people around my age group, around millennial, Generation X, guys in their early 40s, some in their 30s, actually younger than me, and making all these big moves. So it's a total new era here in the NFL, folks. It is a total new era. And the Bills have shown you that they're ready to go. They made a big move. They got Naheem Hines, running back from the Indianapolis Colts. I got here in my notes because Devin Singletary is running the rock better. He's running between the tackles. They have made another trade. They got a safety for depth help. They've got Tre'Davious White. They traded Zach Moss. Kind of fell in the doghouse there up in Buffalo because remember, they've also got James Cook. So they're loaded and ready to go. They got a better pass catcher, a third down back there, Naheem Hines. I love that one. This is a note just before I even get into the actual Bradley Chubb trade. Bradley Chubb is the big one, though. This is the big kahuna. I wanted to get those notes out before I get into the absolute massive trade here. So Bradley Chubb in a contract year, mind you. Now, George Payton, it looked like George Patton, except it's only got one T, right? But George Payton has only been with this team since 2020, this general manager. And now he's already moved on for the coach. You know, he made the big move last year. He's got Russell, Russell Wilson and whatnot. And he brought in Hackett, and it looks like Hackett may be a hack, right? So anyways, so Bradley Chubb, this guy, only making about $7 million. He's 26 in a contract year. He's got 5 sacks this year so far. And like I said, he was a 5th overall draft pick. So my thing is, yes, to be drafted that high, he's not as good a player as a by the way, I think it's either brothers or cousins with Nick Chubb, who plays for the Cleveland Browns. But this was a 5th overall pick by the other general manager, the former regime. So he's not really lived up to that hype. He's not lived up to top 5 hype. He's not a Micah Parsons. He's not a DeMarcus Ware. Not even close to a Von Miller. But he did make one Pro Bowl, folks. He did make one Pro Bowl. But this sends management, they believe in this group. But it also sends the message that Denver's not, even though Denver won last week, right? They've got Russell Wilson. It also sends the message that they're not very satisfied with what they have. A lot of times, even though teams are losing, you'll see management, they'll make moves as if they're going to get better. They'll make pre-trades to get better where they're worse at. They would try to upgrade at receiver or something. They go after an offensive lineman or something of that nature. They did none of that. They were sellers up in Denver. They were sellers. They got Bradley Chubb. And Bradley Chubb, I want to say his compensation here was a 2nd round pick, I want to say. But I've got so many notes here that it's hard to, like I said, it's really hard to keep up with it. But I'll say this. It really doesn't look like a great, like I said, okay, here we go. They're sent San Francisco. Miami sent San Francisco's pick. Remember, San Francisco traded a haul. They traded a haul for to move it with Lance to get Trey Lance last year. So the 2023 first round pick, which is San Francisco's pick, and they sent a 4th round pick and Chase Edmonds. And of course, Denver sent back Bradley Chubb in a 2025 5th round pick. Okay. Now, Miami has Chris Greer, and I've told you this before, that the Miami Dolphins, all that noise aside, with the Stephen Ross, I don't really care for Stephen Ross, but he had to pick. Go back to the Miami Hurricanes. I don't know why I keep saying Hurricanes because it's recruiting and big name players, but Go all the way back to the Chris Greer and Brian Flores feud. Greer's been there, I think, over 10 years, right? He's been there quite a while. And they have drafted really well. If you look at what they've done over the last few years, they've drafted really well. They drafted Jalen Waddle, okay? They've got, for whatever you want to say out of Tua, this guy's got the highest QBR in the NFL right now, okay? I just talked about him yesterday. If he could put on a little bit of weight, stay in the weight room, you could win a Super Bowl with Tua. I did not think that last year. But I think he works. I'm trying to think of this guy's name that works with him. I think his name is McKenzie. Last name McKenzie. He used to work with the Green Bay Packers. He's an advisor, kind of a consultant role with Chris Greer, the general manager down in Miami, right? Well, they got a pretty good deal there for Bradley Chubb. Okay, they got a deal. So that tells you one message, that they're not that concerned, because that's draft capital in a quarterback draft. They're not that concerned about Tua's injury history. Maybe they're thinking like me, if we could just get a little bit more bulk on this guy and develop this running game. By the way, they made another trade. They brought in former 49ers, since the 49ers got Christian McCaffrey, right? They brought in Jeff Wilson. And they've got, obviously, Raheem Mostert. Mostert, probably not using Mostert enough, but they got him. They got Jeff Wilson. And their leading running back last year, they felt so confident that they didn't even activate their leading running back last year in the Detroit game, because I actually had him in a fantasy game. But I got a notification that he was not activated. So that tells me that Chris Greer, all the criticism, and rightfully so, because Ross is always trying to grab the headlines, this guy's secretly doing a good job. He's doing a really good job. And there was some notes here made about this. And I'll tell you, folks, you just will not believe what they have transpired out of the Trey Lance trade. Okay, here's this from Pro Football Focus, okay? Trey Lance was the third overall pick in 2021. Last April, not April, the April before that, right? So remember, they gave up 3 picks. So with the 12th pick, they used another pick with it to trade up. They got Jalen Waddle, who's 4th in the NFL in receiving yards. And then they used, with that big trade, another one of those picks from the 49er trade up to get Tyreek Hill, right? Then they used the last of that pick from San Francisco pick to get Bradley Chubb. That is another Herschel Walker kind of trade, right? Okay, for Trey Lance, who may be a bust, guys. Trey Lance may be a bust. This is some positive news out of Miami. Okay, now remember, San Francisco traded all these picks to move up to get Trey Lance back in 2021. And with those 3 picks, you got Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and Bradley Chubb. You got an excellent pass rusher. Remember, this team they haven't even got Byron Jones back at cornerback. They got one of the best cornerbacks in the league in Xavier Howard, according to Pro Football Focus, and he's very consistent. He's had some issues. I noticed some woman suing him the other day for an STD or something she gave him. But other than that, he cried about money a little bit when the new cornerback money came out. They gave him some more of it because he's doing a good job. He's a good corner. It's hard to find good corners, guys. And remember, they went out and got Terran Armstead at left tackle, and that has helped out tremendously. With Mostert, they've got McDaniels, is very young coach here out of San Francisco. Looks like he is like an intern. But I'll say this. They're going to go to the playoffs. If Tua stays healthy. Now, they're 5-3. Remember, they came back on Baltimore. They beat them. They beat the Patriots. They're the only team to beat Buffalo. Well, I know you say, well, Robert, you're the one that brought up the injuries. Yeah, I did. But look about how hard a hitting that is. They beat Buffalo, okay? They had that massive comeback against Baltimore. And of course, they did give up 27, but they scored 31. They give up 27 to Detroit. But now they've got a pass rush, and they've got those two cornerbacks there. So if they don't make it, if they don't make the playoffs, I think there could be a move to Tua. But if they don't make the playoffs, the only reason they wouldn't make the playoffs, guys, is if Tua got hurt again, which that very well could. And then Teddy Bridgewater, who seems a little bit behind on that offense. I don't know if any of you Miami fans out there noticed that. He is not as sharp as he's looked in the past. And he's a smart player. He's always offered a lot of money. He shows up. He's a pro. He doesn't mess around. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy, right? But I'll tell you what, man. The Dolphins, so what are they? They're 5-3. They're 5-3. And the games they lost were at Cincinnati. That was the temporarily paralysis game, right? Where Tua says he couldn't feel his hand for a minute. Then at the Jets, when they had Skylar Thompson when Bridgewater got hurt. Then they lost another Bridgewater game at home to Minnesota 24-16. They beat Pittsburgh. They beat Detroit. And now they got to play at Chicago, who just traded Roquan Smith on Sunday. Then they got Cleveland at home. I think they'll beat Cleveland at home. And then their bye week. Then they've got Houston. And it does get rougher from there at San Francisco, at L.A., the Chargers, and then at Buffalo. 3 consecutive road games. Even if they lose all 3 of those, they're up to 7 wins. Then they got to play Green Bay at home. Christmas Day, by the way. I think they'll beat Green Bay possibly at home. And then the Jets at the very end of the season. And who knows? They could go up there and beat New England on they could go up there and beat New England on New Year's Day. So you're talking 8, 9, 10, either 10 to 11 wins out of this Miami team. And they've got the talent right now. If they can keep Tua healthy, that's a big $50,000, $64,000 question, right? If they can keep Tua healthy, they've got the talent to actually win out, technically. I don't know if they can beat Frisco and LA back-to-back. I'll take that back. They're not going to beat Buffalo because they've got to play Buffalo on December 18th. 2 weeks prior to that, they got to go to San Francisco, to LA, back home, then back up to Buffalo in December when it could be a blizzard. That's going to slow that offense down. But my point is, they will make the playoffs. They're saying that. The management's saying we believe in this group we have by being buyers. And if they had their reservations, they're not going to use that pick on Bradley Chubb. They're going to save it to leverage it to move up in the draft and go out and get one of these quarterbacks. Whether it be a Levis, who looked terrible against Tennessee from Kentucky, or a Young, who is probably going to go number 1 overall to Bryce Young to Detroit. But they wouldn't be thinking what they're doing otherwise. They would save that draft capital and pull their own San Francisco, right, to go after one of those guys. But my point is, they made a tremendous, tremendous upgrade today. When they've already got the cornerbacks, they needed a little bit more pass rush. They're pretty decent against the run, and they've got that high-powered offense. And these plays are well schemed up. You say, well, it's going to get colder, different. What? Yeah, that's true. But I think their running game is going to improve as the season goes along because this guy is a Kyle Shanahan disciple. He understands that you still need to run the football. You still need to run the football. That's why they went out and got Jeff Wilson. So they've added a little depth there at that running back position too. I really like that trade. Not so sure. Well, they did give up a first-round pick. But George Payton is saying to himself, I feel like I can get more value out of that first-round pick in that slew other than paying Bradley Chubb a massive amount of money because as a pass rusher, they're going to want it. and he's not living up to that fifth. And I want to clean our cap up because we've used a lot of it. We're using a lot on Russell Wilson. See, that's the effect, the chain reaction of signing a guy to a massive deal like Russell Wilson. You're trying to get as many rookie contracts around him as you can that are popping because they're cheap, right? So this is part of that. This is part of paying Russell Wilson. This is why I say, now next year, this is not going to be any big deal. But this is why I say when you get these quarterbacks that want to make over that 12.6%, and I understand sometimes you want to make the money, and initially you want to make the big chunk, the big amount of bread. But if you want to start winning Super Bowls or being competitive for those Super Bowls, you want to keep that salary under that 12 point. Well, it's going to go way up. Not next year, but in 2024, that Wilson's contract is going to be up in the 40s, in the 50. I mean, the annual revenue goes up about $10 million a year. It's not going to shoot up that much. It's not going to put them under that 12.6, Pickles. I'll tell you that. And of course, Hendon Hooker may be. Pickles says Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. He's the front runner right now in the Heisman vote, according to everything I've read. And Tennessee right now, they're number one in the college football playoff. Number one team in yards, and I want to say points per game right now. So, yeah, he could be another guy, Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee, that could shoot right up. Remember, 3 years ago, we didn't say this about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was considered a second-round pick, guys. Joe Burrow was considered a second or third-round pick, potentially not even a first-day pick coming into 19. We saw what happened in 19. Now, they lost yesterday. I think that I will get back to that in my Power 5 when we talk about Baltimore. But anyways, so I like that. Now, this is one I shake my head at. And when you trade within your division like that and go out and get a guy like a TJ Hockenson, the issue with that is that I don't even know where I've got my Hockenson. Okay, here we go. Here I go. Let me get through my notes here. When you trade within your division like that, you are for a former Pro Bowler. Again, this is another general manager here, folks. This is another general manager. And I just think this Brad Holmes, he came in 2021. TJ Hockenson, he was the 8th overall pick out of Iowa. Him, and of course, now this guy's also made a Pro Bowl. His second year with Matt Stafford, he made a Pro Bowl. He caught like 67 balls that year, 6 touchdowns, and that line was terrible. But that was with Matt Stafford. And his numbers have kind of been shaky ever since. But you traded another guy in his prime to a division rival. Hawkinson's 25 years old. He has 2 years left on his rookie deal. And Irv Smith with Minnesota, he's going to be out 8 to 10 weeks. He's got a severe high ankle sprain. When you say it's usually 6 days, when you say 8 to 10, that's severe high ankle. So they're going to have to plug TJ Hockenson in with him to play alongside of guys like Justin Jefferson. But Detroit, and you say, well, what about the compensation? Well, the compensation, I want to say it was a second-round pick involved there. Okay. It was a second-round pick involved there. But the problem with that is if that player is average or below average, you already know that Hawkinson's a good player. You see what I'm saying? That guy has to be a great player. This Brad, what's his name? And he's a pretty young guy. He's only like 44. He's 2 years older than me, this general manager. And you have a guy that now you could say, well, he's only got 4 to 5 catches a game. Yeah, but that was with a new staff there. You're with Jared Goff there at quarterback. But they're just trying to get more depth. Now, right now, they would be considered to be the they would be considered to have the first round overall pick. They would be considered to have the first overall pick, folks. So I just don't, I'm just not sure about that. Now, again, if Minnesota or if Detroit goes out there and knocks it out of the park, that's good. But mind you, he's got 2 years left. It was just a bad trade to trade Hockenson like that on his rookie year. Now, if you want to do that, it like the Bradley Chubb situation is totally different, because if you're Denver, he's on a 5th-year option. If you franchise tag a guy like Bradley Chubb, he's got to make the top 5 salary of the defensive ends in the league, of those edge rushers. And those guys get paid, folks. They get paid. So the fact that he's got 2 years left on his deal, that is concerning for me. If I'm a Detroit fan, now it's always been concerning. They seem to be an organization, they just can't get it right. I feel like that they do try. Remember, they took an assistant from New England, and then they took Matt Patricia with them, and of course that blew up in their face. They went out and got an assistant under the Colts there, right? And this guy wins 9 games and gets them into the playoffs. But that wasn't good enough. So they wanted to bring Matt Patricia in, and Patricia was very had a feud going with the players. It was from what I see, I didn't specifically read this, but it seemed like it was a toxic situation with the players. It was getting really, really, they just couldn't stand to play for the guy, because he tried to be Bill Belichick, and he wasn't being Bill Belichick. He was wearing the T-shirt and a backwards hat, and he gets criticized for doing a nationally televised game that way. So he changes what he's wearing and dresses a little bit more clean cut. Then he calls out one of the reporters for slumping over in his chair. That was his way of getting back. He goes back and forth with the players. So then they get a guy who's more player friendly, a player's coach, and Dan Campbell. And now he seems to be too friendly with his coaches and players. And just now in his 2nd year, he's already forced to fire his defensive back coach. Okay? So it's like they make overcorrections is what I'm trying to get at. That's what I'm trying to get at. And instead of just hiring a really good general manager and sitting back for 4 or 5 years, give him 2 coaches and give him 2 quarterbacks. That's my standard for this. 2 coaches, 2 quarterbacks. You get a get out of jail free card. We've all got stuff from when you buy stuff, pickles from the toy department, or a car called lemons. If you got a lemon car, you can get another car as a manufacturer. That's the thing with the quarterback. You know, guys like, man, he played under this coach. He's 6'4", 225. He's got a rifle for an arm, but then he gets in the NFL. He can't handle the pressure. He doesn't gel well with the scheme, and the quarterback's a bust, and so is the coach. So the coach comes under a great head coach. He was a coordinator, or he was really successful at a college somewhere, and then you get one of those Bill Belichick duds, you know, or you get a Urban Meyer as a or Steve Spurrier as a college term pro instead of a Bill Parcells disciple or somebody of that nature, or a Bill Walsh or Andy Reid type of a coach. You end up getting a Matt Patricia type of coach instead of getting like a Jimmy Johnson out of college, right? Or Pete Carroll out of college. So it like I said, and I may be wrong, they may just not be a good organization, but they're one of the worst in the history of the. And you think, and man, they did the Hard Knocks this year, and they still seem to be back at square one. And I think they'll probably do away with Jared Goff. Jared Goff is his dead cap money. And I told you about that. I like the trade initially because I'm talking about what I'm going to talk about now. Is Jared Goff with Detroit He's only a $10 million dead cap. So if they cut him, they owe him $30 million next year. They're paying him $30 million now, but they only owe Jared Goff. They owe him $30 million next year. If they cut him, they save $20 million. If they trade him, that's negotiable. That's negotiable. Maybe you cut it in half, take 15, you get a pick out of somebody, a second-round pick. Maybe somebody thinks, well, he went to the Super Bowl with Sean McVay. Maybe we can do something with Jared Goff. Or you just cut the guy, take the $10 million hit. You draft Bryce Young, number 1 overall, which they've got the number 1 overall pick right now, if the season ended today. Okay? I'm trying to think. I thought I had that in my screensavers. What would the... Okay, here we go. Detroit, if the season ended today, Detroit, Houston, Carolina, and Pittsburgh's number 4. And that's a good transition. If the season ended today, 2-6, Pittsburgh would be number 4. Now, this is another move. I praised the Bears last night. Not so much today. Pickles, I just cannot believe that the Bears traded their pick, not the pick they acquired from the Ravens, which is worse. Who's going to have a better season? Whoever has the better season means you're getting the worst draft pick, right? Well, the Ravens are going to have a better season than the Bears. So the Bears traded their second-round pick. Yeah, I said it. Instead of a 5th-round pick or a 4th, they traded their second-round pick for Chase Claypool. You said, well, it's kind of sending the signal you want to get Justin Fields some help. You don't want to get him that kind of help. Pittsburgh noted drafted Claypool 49th overall, which was the second round, back in 2020. And Claypool, I got some interesting stats here on Claypool. I've got so many screenshots, folks, because all of this news was coming in. Okay, Claypool, man, you thought when he first came in the league, 62 catches, only started 6 games, 62 catches, 9 touchdowns. I mean, he looked great, right? And then last year when he played 13 games, twice as many games, 59 catches, only 2 touchdowns. And you say, well, what's the knock on Claypool? Well, Claypool, if you guys recall the Minnesota game, Thursday night football, he is in a 2-minute drive to win the game. He is holding up a first down signal, holding on to the football, and the clock is running out. The clock is running. They don't have any timeout. The clock is running out. He's posing with the first down like it's the first play in the first quarter or something, or they're winning in a blowout. So he's wasting time doing that. And meanwhile, they're running out of time, and Ben Roethlisberger's about to blow a gasket. Mike Tomlin, who I've told you before, seems like he's running a loose ship there often at times. He's about to blow a gasket, and they lose the game. They lose that. They were down early in the game. They made a big comeback in the second half against Minnesota. Minnesota ends up winning that game. So you have that. Then you have the him wanting to play more music at practices. He said the practices are too long and too boring. I mean, who are you, dude? You're like a first or second year player. Then he, you could see his play. Some weekdays he'll get 2 touchdowns, 6, 7 catches. He had an explosion game his rookie year, explosive game against Philadelphia. And of course, next week you don't hear from him no more. And then also you want to look back at him. He's big at making it about Chase, right? He's crying on social media, live streaming about Dwayne Haskins' death. Now, I don't blame him for being upset. They were down there practicing. Remember, Dwayne Haskins got ran over back in April, tragic accident. They're running on the highway in South Florida somewhere. But why are you streaming? You're crying on the air. Are you really upset, or are you trying to make it about you? Are you really trying to win the game with 2 minutes to go on the road at Minnesota, or are you trying to make it about you? He's very immature. You don't want to trade for an immature player with a young quarterback. If you want to trade a guy, and he's pretty talented, but he's just not consistent, you know. And then last but not least, he gets beat out by the shorter Deontay Johnson, who a guy I didn't even hear of. I knew about Claypool, his second-round pick. He came out of Notre Dame. But Deontay Johnson, they still got Deontay Johnson, by the way, but they got rid of Claypool, right? They got rid of Claypool. They still got Deontay Johnson. That tells you which one. And they're playing Claypool. I mean, like I said, he's still on a rookie contract there. Because remember, he was drafted in 2020. This is his year 3. He'll have year 4 next year to prove it. Then he'll have the 5th-year option, which the salary go up tremendously with the 5th-year option. Then after that, you're playing. He may want a lot of money, which he's not worth, you know. But there's no way. There's no way I would get maybe a 5th-round pick or something, an extra 5th, or maybe a late 4. You don't give a 2nd-round pick. But Pittsburgh, they've always did that right. And maybe that is what's protected Tomlin over the years, but they simply draft great players, especially receivers. Mike Wallace, remember Mike Wallace? Remember Antonio Brown, Manuel Sanders? This guy's talented, you know. This guy's talented. Hines Ward. I mean, you guys, we could go on and on and on. The guy who went to the Giants, they drafted him, let him walk. They let him walk. The player who shot himself in the leg and won a Super Bowl with the Giants. Because they just got it down. So this is a big this is a strike on Ryan Poles. Now, the flip side is you could say, well, a guy like that, he needs a change. He needs a change of scenery. Maybe that'll help him grow up a little bit, realizing that the team was tired of his childish behavior. And, you know, I can't remember if Chris Carter was cut or traded. Either way, when he got moved out of, now a Hall of Famer, right? When he got moved out of Philadelphia and he went to Minnesota, he says that helped him deal with his drinking problem. Antoine Randall L., Plexico Burris Pickles is who the other guy I was trying to think of. Those two went together because they played together. Randall L. threw a pass. I want to say he threw a pass to Plexico Burris in the Super Bowl against Seattle back in the day. Or it may have been Randall L. that did it. Either way, they draft a lot of really good wide receivers, okay? But going back to that story, now Chris Carter said he had an alcohol problem. He says that changed the scenery, even though he's with a good team there in Philadelphia. That helped him grow up. That helped him grow up when he moved to Minnesota and later played with Randy Moss there. And his career exploded, and he became a Hall of Famer. Maybe that, I mean, this guy's got that 6'4" frame. He's fast, good route runner. He's just not consistent and very immature. Maybe this will help the Bears out. I just would not have gave up a 2nd-round pick for him. There's the college, they're shooting out players like nobody's business. And then I forgot the Steelers. They've already got, George Pickens, who's very talented. Firemouth, they knocked it out of the park with their tight end. Now, of course, Kenny Pickett's calling everybody out for doing – he was probably talking about Claypool. You know, that's why they got rid of Claypool. It was a last-minute deal. So, +1 for Pittsburgh, -1 for the Bears. Still got $100 million next year. Still got another draft pick, the number 2. Maybe the Bears do something. Maybe the Bears don't even like dealing with Fields. Maybe they're looking at, if we put this other piece with Fields, we can get a better read on what Fields can do. So you're going to put him with Mooney. They're both probably a 2 or 3 between the two. I don't think neither one of them's technically a number one type of wide receiver, but it is help. It is what they didn't have prior to yesterday or today during the trade deadline. Okay? But, it is what it is, Pickles. It is what it is. Let's see. Is there any other moves here that were made? Like I said, as far as Minnesota, I really like what Minnesota did. They actually got a Pro Bowl level tight end there, and by the way, like I said, I like what Buffalo did. They added some depth at running back. They brought in another safety there, and but did you ask, well, what about a team like a Tennessee Titans? The Titans made a big move in the offseason. Draft night really caught me by surprise. I went on the Mac and Jim Jeffcoat draft special show, and I'm looking down at my phone. I realize A.J. Brown's been traded. Number one for the Eagles' first-round pick. Of course, they took it and drafted Trayvon Burks there out of Arkansas. I just read that Burks will be back at around the next 2 weeks. He won't be back Sunday night against Kansas City. He could be back for the Denver game here. I'm out of Nashville. So the Titans have went on a 5-game winning streak. Okay, they're a team that got off to a really rough start. We were all down on them. I thought maybe they should trade away and rebuild, pull a Chicago Bears, trade away to a Kevin Byard to a Buffalo or somebody, and maybe trade Henry. Definitely Lawan, who's already hurt. But they go on and win 5 straight, including one over the Raiders. They swept the Colts, the leading Colts there. Go on the road, get a win. These aren't the most impressive wins. Don't get me wrong. The Raiders just got shut out by New Orleans, but wins are wins. They've got a 2.5-game lead. The whole division's losing. But judging by them not trading away really good players says they're somewhat satisfied where they are. And the fact that they did not try to upgrade at cornerback or wide receiver or even think about adding in an extra piece to go with a Harold Landry tells me that they don't think this is a Super Bowl team, although I doubt if the general manager, John Robertson, will admit that publicly. I don't think that they think this is a Super Bowl team. But they did have a decent game Sunday. We don't really know how hurt Ryan Tannehill is. He left the game 2 weeks ago in a walking boot. He didn't play Sunday, but the week leading up to practice, the walking boot was off, but he never practiced, and he was supposedly had an illness. I don't believe he had an illness. I believe he probably has a low ankle sprain, and he's day-to-day, and they were playing a team 32nd against the run when you've got Derrick Henry, and Henry goes out and carries the ball 32 yards for 219, and they didn't even press to move the ball. They just gave it to him and gave it to him some more. I think if they wanted to be more aggressive, he would have set the all-time single game record for because he had over 200 yards coming in the fourth quarter. And he finished with 219. He could have beat that 293 set by Adrian Peterson, but they don't want to wear the guy out, even though he got 32 carries. Malik Willis was awful. I mean, he is super, super rough around the edges. Willis threw 10 passes for 55 yards, and one of them was an interception. Okay. So if Tannehill comes back, I'm thinking this could be, he might have a high ankle sprain, but I doubt it because I think that would have got out. Even in this small market like this, I think that would have got out. But maybe the Titans they're looking at this. Well, we've got Kansas City off a bye week at Kansas City, going against Andy Reid. Probably going to lose that one anyways. maybe, and we won't know this until tomorrow because that's when the first practice report for the new, looks like I'm going in slow motion here, for the new week comes out. So we don't know that for sure. But they have been impressive. They're better at the pass. Their pass rush hasn't really fell off. Trayvon Burks has been out for, like I said, he's going to be back in less than 2 weeks, and the team's on a 5-game winning streak. So it tells you they believe in his coaching, and some of their lower picks and players they've added in free agency have really hit. Bud Dupree seems to have a good year. Dino Autry, he is killing his former team. They've got to be sick at their stomach for letting former Colt like that walk. And but he did. But he's doing well. And Tennessee, like I said, 2.5-game lead. The whole division lost. But they got a very difficult schedule coming up. It's really going to be crucial for this team to make sure they're squared away at the quarterback position. They've got Kansas City, Denver, Green Bay, Cincinnati, at Philadelphia. That's their next few games. Cincinnati Sunday, Denver at home, at Green Bay Thursday night, Sunday at home against the Bengals, a team that's beat them twice in a row. Then they got to go play at the Eagles on December 4th. Well, we saw the record of those teams other than Denver. Then it gets lighter. You got Jacksonville, then at the Chargers, Houston at home, Dallas at home, and then at Jacksonville. They could probably beat Jacksonville. They are still off. I said they would be probably about a 9-8 team winning the division. I'm pretty much on track for that to happen. You know, it is what it is. But that was one of the teams I did want to comment on. Okay, let's go quickly to the Power 5. Number 5, Miami. I just talked about them. Tua leads the league in QBR. 2 of the top 5 wide receivers. Yes, that's true. 2 of the top 5 wide receivers, not in my opinion. No, in actual yardage, are Tua. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So that's my number 5 team. I just love this pass rush pickup. If you can keep Tua healthy, this team's going to make the playoffs. Kind of like Jim Fossil said in the preseason back in 2000. He said, this team's going to make the playoffs. I'm raising the bar. He said that in training camp, and, of course, they got all the way to the Super Bowl. They lost, but they got there. Okay, number 4. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. Okay, number 4, Baltimore. Baltimore's 5-3. They own the tiebreaker over Cleveland and Cincinnati. Excuse me. Big road win at Tampa Bay. Plus, they brought in Roquan Smith. Remember, they led in every game, guys. They led in every game this year. So Baltimore, they're number 4 in my Power 5. Number 3, Kansas City. Now, they had a bye week. Why did they drop? Well, because I just like what Philadelphia is doing by adding Robert Quinn. But, yeah, Kansas City leading their division. The trade for the Tyreek Hill trade has worked out good. I think that this team is only going to get better. They could be number 1 at one point because they've added Tony. They got Juju Smith-Schuster, and mainly they've got that offensive line gelling. And you just feel like that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they seem to keep building, guys. I don't know if you noticed it. They seem to keep adding something new to their repertoire each and every week. That these two, especially off of bye week, which they played Sunday night, Tennessee, each week, there's something I see different. Sometimes a fake handoff, a snap to the tight end, a screen pass to the tight end, some kind of oddball in and around type of play with with Miko Hartman or somebody. I forgot about him, his speed and everything. So I got them. I still got them at 3. Of course, they could come all the way up to 1. Number 2, the Eagles. Love what they did, adding Robert Quinn. The bye week, they wasn't feeling themselves after the bye week, playing in-state rival. They did not take their opponents lightly. They blew out the Steelers there. 3 touchdowns to A.J. Brown. That turned out to be a good play for them. Probably the best offensive line in football. Not a lot of holes. They've got run defense. They've got pass rush now. They've got two of the best cornerback tandems in Bradbury, Darius Slay. Got to keep them at number 2, but they would probably be underdogs even to Kansas City, but definitely the Buffalo at number 1. Still number 1 total yards, total offense, and number 1 or number 2 in just about every defensive category. And I like the fact that they added Naheem Hines. They got rid of Moss there. They added another safety. I want to say they picked up from, not a big name, but they picked up a little bit of depth at safety from the Atlanta, because I know that they lost Hyde for the season, but they're going to get Tre'Davious White back. He's officially reactivated. That's the cornerback that tore his ACL last year. So they feel very confident and comfortable with what they did, even giving Von Miller all that money. These young pass rushers around Von Miller, they're all playing well. This team, I think they're going to win about 13 to 14 games. I don't think they're going to win less than 13 pending major injuries. So, again, Buffalo 1, Philadelphia 2, Kansas City 3. That's kind of a shaky 3. Baltimore 4, and Miami 5, okay? Could I put a Tennessee 5? Yes, possibly. Could I put a Minnesota 5? Yes, possibly. But Minnesota, when they was really tested on the road, what happened to Minnesota when they went on the road? Okay, they went on to Philadelphia and they got beat. That game was not even close. Not even close. So maybe I'll throw a Dallas in there in a few weeks. But that is my 5 for right now, folks. We got to switch gears here. It's 51 minutes into it. I'm telling you, there was so much in here. I just couldn't get to the college football. But there was a heck of a story here out of the NBA. The Nets have moved off. They said mutually agreed to part ways. No, they fired Steve Nash, okay? Steve Nash was 2-5. And of course, at this point, Steve Nash is tired of dealing with these egos. And I said they should have brought in a better defensive assistant. And I did not know this. I knew this, but I forgot about it, okay? But Ime Udoka, the Celtics coach, has got in all this trouble. He was the assistant under Nash, not this year, obviously, but last year. Remember, that Nets team went to Game 7 against Milwaukee, who ultimately won the championship in 2021, if you recall, right? They went to Game 7 with all those injuries and stuff. That was with Ime Udoka being the assistant coach there. They did not replace him well. So everything, and now the general manager for Brooklyn, he's denying this. But Adrian Wojciechowski, ESPN, Shams Charania, both are reporting it's a done deal. He's going to be hired without, check this out, without draft compensation from Boston. Boston, they're looking at this situation as preventing them from having to make another tough call to fire him, because part of the report says that he's not going to be, it would be a very tough time, him with the subordinate. I know there's other rumors out there, but whatever this affair was, it was really, really messy. And mind you, Matt Barnes, a guy who jumped over a fence and punched Derek Fisher, that used to play with the Lakers, and attacked him and almost beat him to death in front of his kids. But the guy's security pulled him off at a barbecue. Matt Barnes said this is messy. He says, from what I hear, this is really messy. If Matt Barnes says this Ime Udoka and female employee thing is a messy situation, I believe Matt Barnes. So they didn't want to have to make that decision. And here's another thing. Now, Boston's 4-2. So Boston's got off to a pretty good start here with what's this guy's name? Joe Mazzulla. You know, as I mentioned before, that Paul Westhead back in 1979, 1980 took over for Jack McKinney. Jack McKinney was 13 games into the season with the Lakers. He had a really bad bike wreck on his 10 speed. He was in a coma, had memory issues and all that stuff. Well, Paul Westhead ended up taking over. The rest is history. The Lakers win the championship with a 20-year-old who's played center, Magic Johnson. Then you ask yourself, can Udoka really do something? Can Ime really do something with the Nets? Guys, there's a World Series is on right now. The World Series. You know what the Eagles did? The Phillies did? The Philadelphia Phillies fired Joe Girardi in June, and they were 22-29. Yes, that's below 500 in June. They were 6 games out of first place. They were 5.5 games out of the wild card. Excuse me. They were like 15, 20 games. The Braves and the Mets were way ahead, right? So they get hot. They get all the way into the World Series. I've never heard of this before. They've won a game. Even if they don't win the World Series, it's possible. Yeah. And Pickle says he has character issues. He won't. Phillies and the Phillies are leading 4-0 is what Pickle says. But my point is that the idea of firing a coach and hiring one in season, it's not impossible. It's not impossible for you to win a championship or compete for a championship. It's not impossible to put your scheme or put your culture there of how you want to play. We'll see. Now, Udoka, we'll see what happens. I mean, if he's smart, he's got to learn his lesson. If he does something like this again, he's got a problem then, because this is a tremendous opportunity to coach with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, Steph Curry is going to be back soon. Joe Harris, I think, is already back. You got all those shooters. You got the defense. You got the ball handling there. You got the experience there. You got a little bit of depth there off the bench. There would be no excuse to not make this team competitive. There's no excuse, really. But, I mean, he could screw it up. But if you're the Nets, I see what the school of thought was. You know, I wouldn't have hired Steve Nash. I would have hired more of an experienced coach, you know, to coach a guy like a Kevin Durant. You could have went a little bit bigger there in the experience. Corey says it's a great defensive mind. He worked under Pop. Yeah, they didn't play a lick of defense. They bring him in from San Antonio. Played under Pop for a number of years. He's a huge part of making the Celtics the number one defensive team. The number one defensive team there. We'll see. And the offense is already there. The offense is already there. I believe in second chances. If the guy screws this up, it's on him. Pickle says, Zig Ziglar says, if you cheat in golf, you'll cheat in life. Pickle says, Udoka has character issues. He won't last 2 years. Now, there's a college coach named Bobby Petrino. He used to coach University of Louisville football. Really hot coach. Started getting guys drafted really high. He used to coach, I want to say, he coached Lamar Jackson. Current star in the NFL, Baltimore Ravens, won a Heisman Trophy, right? I want to say, with Louisville. But this guy was jumping, trying to talk about other jobs, saying he's lying, and then he ends up having some kind of weird affair. Supposedly, a woman hit him, a subordinate, similar situation. Lady hits him with a motorcycle helmet over this crazy affair, and this was later on at Arkansas. So he's a guy that kind of has a lot of talent, but he had some character issues that kind of lasted with him. And eventually his coaching went downhill. He goes to the NFL, walks out on that team, takes in the middle of the season, by the way, walks out, leaves a note in the locker room, takes the job, Bobby Petrino, takes the job with Arkansas. He's seeing him having some kind of affair or something with an assistant there, something to do with a motorcycle wreck. People really speculate that this woman hit him with a helmet. They were fighting about something. He gets fired. He goes take a few other small-time jobs, comes back to Louisville. His coaching got worse. He stayed out of trouble, but he got himself in so much entanglements that his coaching. So that could be the other side of things. I don't think that'll happen with Udoka, but I see what Pickles is saying. And Petrino's an excellent example. Pickles says, can't tell the truth. It was like a cheerleader or subordinate. I can't remember what it was, but I would take the chance. The Nets, owners got a lot of money. I would chance Udoka because they need a defensive guy. They need one of those pop assistants. If this don't work out, they'll probably just blow the team up. They'll blow the team up because Kevin Durant's not getting any younger. He's 34 years old. Kyrie's in a contract year anyways. And Ben Simmons, you don't know what the heck he's going to do from one day to the next. But we'll see. I think that that being said, again, the Phillies are in the World Series. Pickle says they're up 4-0. They could be up 2-1 in the World Series. They fired Joe Girardi. By the way, Joe Girardi won a World Series with the Yankees. But apparently the Phillies didn't think he could connect with the young players. He was too caught up in the analytics and all that nonsense. And he got burned out real quick. So he gets fired. The interim coach comes in, and they end up in the World Series as we speak. Wow. I don't know how I got all that information in my head. I just spew out. I guess I'll think about it all day, guys. If you guys like the show, share the show. We'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll say we, like me, myself, and I. We will get into this college football playoff thing. Talk about the jobs opening there. Auburn, like I predicted, is open. I think Deion, I really want to make a case for Deion taking that job since he's going to leave. I'd like to see Deion stay at Jackson State, but he's kicking butt. I like his comments there. We'll talk a little bit about the rise of Tennessee. They're number one in the college football rankings. And I may get into some other news, maybe some more fallout of this Steve Nash thing. I think it's a fascinating story out of the NBA. We'll have all that and more tonight on Sport. Tomorrow, same time here on Sports Scope. Thanks, guys.